And that's why I can never go back to Des Moines. Oh, we're live. Hey, everybody.
Oh, hi.
My name is Gary Mitchell. I am the ringleader of this wonderful collection of reprobates known as the Dragon Con Theater and Performing Arts Lovers unofficial group. Thank you all for joining us on a Saturday evening. I'm sure you had nothing more important to do. To talk tonight about the art of plays. So I am going to start with introducing my cohort, Miss Sarah Rose.
Hi.
There you go. Yes, it's audio and visual, Sarah.
I guess I'm going to say hi again.
There you go. To join us to talk on this topic, we have collected a group of professional, or at least claiming to be professional. I'll let them say who they are and their bona fides now, starting with Chris.
Okay. Thank you, Gary, so much. I'm Chris. I have lived my entire life in New York and have been active in the New York City theater industry since 1999. I've worked both off-Broadway, off-Broadway, and am currently working with a Broadway producer. And love the theater. It's been a massive part of my life since I was 5 years old.
Very cool. Next up, directly beneath me, at least on my screen, is the lovely Miss Mara Rose.
Actually, it's Mix Mara Rose. I'm non-binary.
Thank you for the correction.
No worries. I go by Gigi. So I have been doing theater since, I guess, technically 1986. The first thing I was ever involved in was a little community theater project as a kid called Give Peace a Chance out here in Roanoke, Virginia. And I kind of caught the theater bug and continued it in high school, and then community theater, and then opened up a small production company called Prop House 42 Productions. And we primarily do costume sets and props for the theater industry and the entertainment industry, but we also work quite a bit in the convention industry. And I do a lot with various theaters, both union and non-union, primarily East Coast, but have done quite a few things over in California and Washington State and up in Vancouver. So been kind of everywhere. And since you guys are a Dragon Con lovers group, I would feel remiss if I didn't say I've been doing Dragon Con since 1996. So
Wow.
Nice. One of the few people I know that's been doing it longer than I have. My first was 99.
Really?
So, yeah.
Yeah, I followed Guar down there. That's a whole nother story.
Okay, we need to talk later because that's the whole reason my crew and I went, was to see Guar perform.
Right? It was awesome.
All right, and southwest stage left for me is JJ.
Hi, my name is JJ Hawkins. I am currently in Portland, Oregon. To keep it short, the joke was that I did my first play when I was 12 days old. I was born in December, and they put me in the church play as the baby Jesus, and I slept through the whole show like a pro.
Awesome. Good acting.
And then, around third grade is when I think I got my first real role as the Artful Dodger, and just sort of been doing it on and off, like as much as I could my entire life. And then the last, the last 10 years or so, just been focusing on improvisational theater. I was with an improv troupe here in Portland for many years until we disbanded, and then was part of a theater company here in Portland where named Twilight Repertory Theater. We did, I think we did about 5 seasons before the money ran out, so now just sort of seeing where life takes me next.
All right. And also with us in the other opposite corner from me, that makes us the poles, I guess, is Matt Duron.
I guess I'm glad I'm going last. I'll keep it really short and sweet. I'm not as in the professional end as everybody else, but I've been in doing theater for a while. I think my first actual thing was actually in high school, so we're looking at 20 years ago.
Wow.
After that, yeah, I feel so old. And then did some community theater stuff. Did Mice and Men. Did a lot of stuff. Did a lot of stuff throughout undergrad, and now I'm more of a surveyor of the arts. But I have a lot of my background actually is in English writing and literature, so I actually took a performance arts and a theater arts minor on that. So that's where I'm at as far as my theater involvement presently goes.
Nice. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, we're here to discuss. The name of the panel is The Art of Plays, and this is the part of our continuing series of It's Not Just Musicals. Our opening tour, if you will, of talking to people, because every time we mention that we want to make this a track at DragonCon and we want to do this, a lot of people, I've had multiple people, including other track directors, going, are there enough musicals to do a whole track? I'm like, it's not just musicals.
It's not just musicals.
All right. Broadway is always been more than musicals. Theater has always been more than musicals. So what we're here to discuss then is why we like non-musical plays, any sort of live performance show without a singing component. At least, there might be a guy with a guitar in there, but that's just character. We're not here to talk about him.
I'm not talking about Shakespearean lute players. Got it.
Exactly. So I'm going to go in reverse order and start with you, Matt, to kick us off in. What was the first play that you recall seeing or performing in, and what stuck with you and what drew you into this madness to stick with it?
Like with JJ, one of my first memories of actually doing theater was in the church realm. But I think what stuck with me growing older and actually in high school was being able to not be myself and being able to draw people in and after a show go, oh my God, I hated you. You were so good. I loved it. And that was probably my favorite part, what kept me going through and doing theater. So I think my first actual show that I remember doing was Metamorphosis by Mary Zimmerman in high school. And we actually had to, if you're not familiar, we had to actually build the pool inside this tiny little auditorium. So we had to get some of our alumni out to figure out the physics of the pool lining and the water distribution, which was a lot of fun. And I got to play Man 5, which there weren't character names, were just 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And Man 5 was great because I got to be a drunk, I got to be Hades, I got to be Cupid, and Phaethon, which is the son of Apollo, and a lot of it was really good, being able to be so many different characters and being in one show, and people going, oh well, you did this and that, but I kept on going through the motions with theater through that means.
Okay,
Awesome.
and how about you, JJ?
I guess the first play I ever saw and did were pretty close to around the same time. Like I said, when I was in third grade, I did the Artful Dodger, and I say it was not the entire show of Oliver because we were kids, and right. So they did what we could handle. But it was around that time that my mom also took me to. We were living in Los Angeles at the time, and she took me to a college production of Whose Life Is It Anyway?
And that's awesome.
And as a little kid, it completely blew my mind that like that one character spends the entire time in the bed, but is just riveting. That you don't have to do a lot. You just have to draw people in, which again, if we're talking about our love of theater, that's exactly what I love about theater versus television or film, is that very visceral When I directed a show a couple of years ago called Lobby Hero, what I said was because we were doing it in a little black box theater, and what I told everybody is I wanted it to feel, because there's so much of that show that's uncomfortable, that I wanted it to feel like you were over at your friend's house when their parents started fighting. And you can't get that with any other medium. It's when there are people right in front of you and their emotions are right in front of you and they're telling their stories right in front of you, that it's electrifying, and you can't really get that in any other medium.
It's intimate.
Yeah.
It's intimate and it's immediate. And that's what keeps people coming back, because there's always a level of separation with a screen in front of you. And when you're at the theater, it's engrossing. You become a part of the experience.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a thing I saw, it went around a little while ago. We may have even discussed it on one of these, where it's like you watching a movie and there's a person standing in the middle of like desolation. There's nothing around. Maybe there's that sparse tree off in the distance, completely flat. You can see for thousands of miles, and they're like, I'm alone. You're like, dude, you're in and then pose that in a theater, like a small little independent theater with like 45 people around you, and there's a guy alone on the stage in the darkness, and he says, I am alone. You're like, oh man, and it just hits you more. It's like, never mind the fact that, in the one that's, you can see it and you're by yourself and you are alone, but then with this group of people, it's just like there's that reality of the stage where it can grab you more effectively, I think, than any TV show or movie.
Definitely.
Yeah. I agree.
And it's a shared experience. It's a bonding experience, not only for the actors, but for the audience as well. When you step into a theater and those lights go down and you're there with 500 or 1,000 strangers, suddenly you're all reacting to the same things over and over that nobody else is ever going to see again. Even if they see the same show the following night, you're never going to have that experience with those people ever again. And it's something really special that theater does to people.
Indeed. All right. And as much as I wanted you to follow up with that, I am going to keep in order. And Mara, how about you?
Well, like I said, I grew up in Roanoke, Virginia, and we've got kind of an interesting community there that has always been very art centered. So we've got Hollins College, which has an amazing theater program, and Virginia Tech. We've got Center in the Square, which is home of the Mill Mountain Theater, and lots of great little historic theaters all throughout southwestern Virginia. So I grew up with a mom that loved theater, loved opera, loved orchestra, and of course, I started playing the violin when I was 3, and my uncle and aunt were both very involved with the orchestra scene, and so we went and saw things regularly. And in like 1985-ish, they did this open call for a new show that they were going to do called Give Peace a Chance, which, this is the age of the Berlin Wall and all the major tensions between Russia and the United States, and they were putting on a children's play about basically bridging that gap. So I got to be an extra in that. And it was really cool because I was young. I was probably about, it was under 10. And so I thought it was kind of a neat experience because I got to hang out with all of these other kids and be on stage. And I think I had one speaking line, which did happen to be in Russian. And, I gave my line and people cheered, and it was like, oh, this is terrifying. And then I realized I suffered from the worst case of stage fright on the face of the planet. But I managed to pull it off every night. And so for me, it was, by the time it came around again in high school, it was less about how do I get back on the stage as to what can I do in the back? Because you guys are cool and I super love hanging out with you, but that's not where I need to be, And so in high school, we did a lot of Shakespeare. And so I got to do a lot of really cool props and set pieces, and I got to do makeup and costumes for characters from Merchant of Venice and the evil Scottish play that shall not be named. We did Carousel, which of course is a musical, and we're not talking about those, but we had wonderful experiences in theater, and then they would put on these Follies productions. And so the theater would have like all of these kids come and try out, and my theater teacher would look at me and go, "You sure you don't want to get up with the violin?" And I said, no. Well, my junior year, they had 3 acts cancel last minute. And he was like,
Oh.
"You brought your violin, right?" I was like, "In my car." Go get your violin. So that was the next time that I really got on stage. But and then I was forced to do it again when I was in college because I was taking classes and had to get credits. Happened to be pregnant at the time and we were doing a version of The Wizard of Oz, and I desperately wanted to be the Wicked Witch because I have a really remarkable impression of the Wicked Witch. And I went in, and it's, kind of a hazard of everyone knowing you really well. They look at you and they go, "There's no way you can be the Wicked Witch." And I was pregnant, so they cast me as the Cowardly Lion so that way the suit would hide the baby. And so after that, I didn't really care about getting on stage quite so much because I still enjoyed being in back of house. But I mean, I've been involved with some really amazing plays from back of house. He was just talking about building the pool on stage, and I'm literally sitting here going, "I could do this, I could do this, I could do that." Like, as soon as you get these scripts and you start looking through things, one of the really neat things to do is look through all of the set designs that are kind of listed or the descriptions that are outlined and go, "Oh, I can do it this way. I can do it better. I can make this move and make it an easier transition for the next scene." And so that's the part of theater that I love, is the planning and the design and putting together exactly what the production is going to look like. And that's what I do with Prop House 42. I'm a production designer. So I also build costumes and sets and everything else. But yeah, so that's what got me into theater. But what kept me in theater was the really cool stuff back at house. Because even though I can talk to people really well and I can act, I've done quite a bit of improv, quite a bit of live action, that kind of thing. For some reason, once you've got an audience of more than 50 people standing in front of you, even if the lights are right in your eyes and you can't see them, my body
they're there.
It's not what I want to do. Like, I can force myself to do it, but it's not what I want to do.
Strangely enough, that's when I feel the most myself.
Yeah.
See, I love doing it in improv and that kind of thing, but when it's scripted and you've got to hit your marks and hit your lines, that's like, I played the mom in Heathers. Again, musicals. I know we're not really supposed to be talking about this, but there's a piece in that where Heather's mom opens the closet door and finds her daughter hanging.
Right.
And of course it's staged, it's not real, but her reaction has to be real. And I have some unique experiences to draw off of from that, or for that, which is why they cast me. And I was also doing the sets, the props, and the costumes, and it happened to be community theater. So you know how that goes, right?
Oh, yeah.
And
6 hats in waiting.
Yeah, exactly. And so I used it, and I got a lot of really crazy, amazing reviews on it. And so that was like, oh, okay, maybe I am good enough to be on stage, but I still want to be there.
It's not for everyone.
Yeah. Well, and how about you, Chris?
I was in my first play in the first grade. It was a production based off of Disney's Robin Hood, and I got to be one of the merry men and a villager.
Oh, wow.
And, growing up in New York, I've always been a little bit spoiled for theater. My parents took us to our first Broadway play when we were 5.
Oh, that's awesome.
And that was Sandy Duncan and Peter Pan at the Lunt-Fontanne. And that was just it. I was hooked for life.
Yeah.
Forget about it. That was just me. That was who I wanted to be.
Too.
Yeah.
And the first play that I saw, again, spoiled. I don't know. I'm sure everybody watching remembers the original Battlestar Galactica.
Of course.
Well, I was the most massive fan of Jane Seymour. I had the biggest girl crush in the world on Jane Seymour. I wanted to be Jane Seymour.
Yep.
And Jane Seymour was on Broadway.
Oh.
I was 10 years old. The play was not appropriate. My mother said no multiple times, and just following her around the house, begging, pleading, harassing her at every turn, I finally got her to say yes. And so the first play I ever saw in the theater as an audience member was Amadeus.
Oh.
With Jane Seymour, Tim Curry, and Ian McKellen.
God, that was an amazing.
And I have every playbill from every play I've ever been to, from the old Marionette Theater in Central Park to a show I saw last week. And my playbills are probably about 1,000 at this point. And that's one of my favorites, though. I had that out a few weeks ago because a friend of mine asked me about it. And it's, to date, one of the best theater experiences of my entire life.
That's awesome.
I grew up wanting to act. That was me. I didn't have the best childhood from the point of view of the other kids. And I always felt, as you said, JJ, my most myself on stage. I never wanted to be myself. So when somebody let me put on another character and slip into someone else's skin for a while, I was completely and totally happy. And I always acted. I took professional classes at the Herbert Berghoff Studio all through high school, went to college for theater, acted for a few years after that. And it finally just occurred to me that that wasn't the right path. I love acting. I think I have a bit of a talent for it. But the stress level, the rejection for the way I grew up, I just couldn't do it. So I left that path and I segued into admin. No. Sorry, Kat.
It's not a live stream until someone's cat walks into it.
And don't do it. Mine's a biter. He fights.
Oh,
that's why I'm out here, because I have a shoulder cat that will literally climb and curl, and you won't see my face. You'll just see his rear end.
Yeah. No, this one is a rescue cat who's trying to scratch me right now because I won't let him on the computer.
There we go. Kitty.
Kitty.
Hello, Kitty.
His name is Oliver, and he was a street cat from Jamaica, Queens.
Oh.
And no, go away. But yeah, so I segued into admin, and then I wanted to stay involved in the industry. I wanted to do whatever I could to make theater happen. And that's my life. It's been my life.
Right, and how about you, Sarah?
So the first play I was in, I'm going to be honest, it was a Christmas pageant at church. I mean, it just.
So you and JJ, you like that?
Exactly. I was just sheep. And no lines, obviously. And then I
ba is a line.
100%. 100%.
And I'm gonna be honest, like I can't remember the first time I acted in a play because I'm not very good with like times of this. I mean, I did them in college, I did them in high school. But the first one I remember seeing was Arsenic and Old Lace. It just it was, and it stuck with me all throughout my childhood, up through totally inappropriate childhood play. They did it, but that was the one that stuck with me. And in college, I really got more into acting and acting beyond musicals. We did a lot of self-written, self-produced. Sometimes we did like rewrites of Shakespeare and other notable playwrights. We did our kind of own version of the vagina monologues. Like we've done just various things, but my first memory of play specifically is Arsenic and Old Lace. So
speaking of memory, I just got a message from a friend of mine to correct myself. The name of the play in 1986 was not Give Peace a Chance. It was Peace Child.
Oh. Well, there we go.
Ooh, I'm old. I forgot.
I wouldn't know anything about being old.
Yeah, I think that's going around.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about plays and plays in general. We've heard some good memories so far. So I'm going to come back around to you, Matt, and start with you with this question of what makes a play special, especially to you? And do you prefer more classic shows or something more modernist, like Arsenic and Lace versus we were just talking about it.
Vagina monologue.
Vagina monologues. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Now I want the old Arsenic monologues.
The old Arsenic one.
Or Vagina and Old Lace. Well,
Wait, can plays have fan fiction? Because we could do that. No.
Yeah.
Oh, it's already being written right now to be
Right
up
now,
on
so
AO3 by the end of the night.
I think what makes a play special, in all honesty, is something it's different for everybody, whether it's a character or a line or the way that the set makes you feel when you see the house lights go up or house lights come down and the stage lights go up. It's all specific to the person, but for me, it's overall. It's how I feel like I'm changed afterwards after seeing a show or even reading the plays. Like I've got Harvey sitting on my shelf right now, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I didn't realize it was a play until in high school. But being able to see the transformation of someone, say like again in high school, these people, and you see the transformation from what they've gone to, what you see in a day-to-day life to how they are on stage. Taking that in, and again, how everything at the end of the show, how that changes you and how it makes you think differently. I think that's really what makes live theater so special. I can say that I've never left a show the same way as I've gone in. But I'd say that, there's a second part to the question, Gary, and I kind of like tangented.
Do you prefer are you drawn more to classic or modern, or does it matter?
It doesn't really matter. I like the classic only because that's I've seen so many classic movies that were plays that were movies and movies that ended up being plays. But I do like I like some modern stuff. Some I think Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, Eric Bogosian. That'd be considered modern. I've never seen the Vagina monologues, but I have seen one performed. But it doesn't. I'm not like a staunch classicist.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Chris?
Well, I cut my teeth on Shakespeare. I had to do that in school, and I absolutely love the classics. Shakespeare, the Greek plays, they're amazing. Mm-hmm. But I really love 20th century and 21st century drama. Mm-hmm. Arthur Miller is one of my favorite playwrights of all time. Tennessee Williams. In recent years, Taylor Mack, his mm-hmm. Gary, a sequel to Titus Andronicus, was like ridiculous. And Yasmina Reza. There are so many people. There's a pantheon of amazing talent out there right now. And it's so hard to keep on top of everything and everyone. And, Martin McDonagh with his Irish plays.
Yes.
And, that really is one of the best things about going to the theater is the variety. It taps you into different human experiences in all different cultures and all different time periods. And it really is one of the most mind-expanding things a person can do. And, in my opinion, every single child should be taken by the hand and brought to the theater by the time they're 5, and mm-hmm. once a year, every year after that, until they're adults. And then they can, then they can choose for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, and we could do and we probably will do a whole panel on children's theater. I mean, that is I know a lot of people who live for that.
I volunteer as tribute.
My first job in New York was for a very famous theater for young audiences called TheaterWorks USA.
Oh, wow.
And I ran their weekend series here in New York. They tour nationally. And when the shows would come back through New York, I ran a subscription series for families in the tri-state.
Nice.
So yeah, it was fantastic. That's an amazing theater company.
Definitely.
Okay. And how about you, Mara? You talked a little bit about some of your first plays, but what makes a play special to you, and what
Well,
draws you?
I like plays that are done differently, if that makes sense. So, I not necessarily in the acting or in the, not changing obviously the prose or the speaking lines. I like plays that are presented like I love theaters that give you the range to take a classic and rework it to a more modern feel. And so one of the things that I love, because I do love classic plays. In fact, the Greeks are some of my favorites. Antigone is probably my all-time favorite. And so like I have long dreamed of a theater calling me and going, we're going to redo Antigone. Can you come do our sets? Because I have this whole moving set layout kind of designed to rework it where, you're not using periactois and all of these great Greek inventions to tell the story. You're using a more modern take on those things, and it's more visually engaging. So I love the idea of classic theater being brought into a more modern age. That said, I love modern theater, and I also love modern minimalist theater, which is kind of contrary to the idea of being a set designer, because obviously we want to have beautiful sets and things of that nature. But there is something to be said for minimalist design where the characters and the prose are allowed to simply speak for themselves. And so I enjoy that quite a bit. I also love experimental theater. And some of the most engaging and intellectually stimulating plays that I've been involved with have been super experimental. They get maybe 5 or 6 shots in, little local theaters or regional theaters. I've been involved in a couple that got a limited 2-week run off Broadway, which was pretty cool. But those are few and far between, and they're hard to come by. And so, like Chris was saying, you've got this kind of renaissance happening of amazing playwrights and true theatrical genius coming into the world and being in the world right now. It's a very exciting time to live in the theater community. But there are still some things that can be done to make it even more exciting. And I think a lot of that comes to tying the classics to the modern realm and doing more experimental theater. That's just my opinion.
Mara, did you ever hear about Alan Cummings' Macbeth, his one-man Macbeth?
I'm actually of the mindset that I now have to turn around 3 times backwards, throw salt in the air, spit.
We're not in the theater.
We're not in the theater, sweetie.
I have heard of his beautiful Scottish play. I have not actually had.
I think it's available. It did stream as a Fathom event, so I think it's available somewhere. If you ever have the chance, that is exactly what you will love more than anything.
I will have to go hunt it down.
It's set in a medical psych ward.
Oh
wow.
They never explain why he's there, but he does the entire play himself, all the characters, as a way of working through the trauma that he's just experienced.
Oh, wow.
And it is so powerful and so...
So I actually have a friend that loves to tell me that I need to actually spend more time watching theater and less time making it. So she does that by sending me clips of things regularly. And I have seen clips. Because as soon as you said it was the doctor one, I'm like, oh my God, yes, I've seen this. But I haven't seen all of it by any stretch of the imagination. There's also a really amazing experimental version of Waiting for Godot that I have been desperate to hunt down. And so there are some really cool conceptual things,
Mhm.
taking even more modern plays and making them new and different. And so it's just a very exciting time to be involved in the theater, whether you're standing on front of the stage or whether you're in the back of it. And but I will say this, for everybody that wants to be an actor on stage, remember there's so many people backstage needed to make these things happen.
Yeah.
Don't forget, if you don't get a role, maybe go learn a trade, because we need riggers, we need lighting techs, we need sound techs, we need people that can not just make costumes but dress people. It's all important stuff in the theater, and it all plays into
Yes.
you
And
know
we will definitely be doing a panel on tech and backstage. Definitely. Yeah. Without the tech team, you're just a person emoting in the dark, as they say.
exactly.
But now I want to get to JJ and his answer.
Well, I have two kind of ways that I'm thinking about this, and I'll try not to ramble. But so there's, what do you find special about plays as someone who's actually learning the script and doing it, or viewing the play? And so, like, certainly, I've had a chance to see, some amazing performances. I was lucky enough to see Uta Hagen in her last show. I was in the theater the night she fell off the stage, and everybody freaked out. And and she wanted to finish the show, but the theater didn't want to let her.
The show must go on.
Sometimes you got to quit for liability reasons.
And I also, they did make her quit for liability reasons. But also my dear friend Elizabeth has been doing Macbeth, or versions of Macbeth, for like the last couple of years, where they did the full version, and they've done a shortened version that's 1 hour. That's absolutely amazing, and in a way kind of forced experimental, in the fact that they didn't have enough actors, so there's no Banquo, and so the witches play Banquo, and so there's these things that are going on that are exciting, that are partially because of really, really cool concepts to do, and also because you just don't have enough people to play all of the roles. And that's one of the things that is beautiful about theater, is that it is something that you kind of have to think on your feet. But as far as doing it, the what makes a play special for me is the developing of it. Even if the play is something that doesn't necessarily come out the way you wanted it to. I was involved with a production of why can I not think of this? It's one of Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew. I was in a production of Taming of the Shrew where we took it back to its Commedia dell'arte roots, where we improvised, broke the show down into beats, improvised the show, had the masks. We over rehearsed it, and I wasn't particularly happy with the final product, but the process of developing it was really exciting. We did something similar with a Moliere play where we couldn't afford the rights to one of the translations, so we improvised our own translation, but also it had very, very problematic gender roles, so we switched all the gender roles, so there wasn't the problem of the Punch and Judy problems as much. And so those are what I like being part of the process. And as far as whether or not modern or classical, really, when it's done right and you're getting the human relationships and the stories in front of you, it's kind of hard for me to delineate, because something like The Weir is an insular, you're not going to get anything else like that. It's such a still show, and it's so few actors, but it's still, when it comes down to, is just this story that draws you in. King Lear does the same thing. And so it's really, to me, it's more about, it's not so much when the show was written, but how well it can be conveyed to pull me into the story and the ideas they're trying to tell me while we're telling it.
So that actually reminds me of something too. One of the things that actually, to me, makes theater so special the best story I have to kind of encapsulate it is the Glass Menagerie.
Mhm.
So the Glass Menagerie I've been involved with on stage. I've done this play 6 different times. And I've been on the stage in it. I've been backstage in various different roles in it. And I've been the stage manager for it. With the Glass Menagerie, it does not matter who you have acting, what your set looks like, any of the extemporaneous details, props, etc. And I'm not going to say they're not important, but the magic of theater is completely encapsulated in how that show comes together every single time. Every director can have a different vision, but the power is the story, and it's telling the story, and that is what makes theater so special. The magic is all in how the story is crafted before it ever even hits the stage, and every interpretation of it becomes another beautiful piece of the art. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, absolutely.
No, no.
That's,
Perfect.
I mean, that's it. I mean, and this is a subject for a whole other panel, but that's one of the reasons I'm always torn on recording a play, because on the one hand, I think all plays should be recorded for posterity, and because not everybody's going to get to go to Broadway to see a show.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is a magic in that ephemeralness of the, there's 50 of us here, and we're the ones who got to see this. And like Chris, you mentioned this earlier, it's like, and it will never be, it could be the exact same actors, the exact same audience, but it will never be that exact same experience again.
Yeah.
And that kind of adds to the magic of a play and that live performance.
It's kind of, to go back to the Glass Menagerie, the one time that I was actually on stage in it, when there are people who do not know me that see me in something and come to me and say that touched me in some way. And this young lady went and saw the show one night, and she came back the second night with these fake blue roses wrapped up with in my hand. And I don't think I've ever cried so hard in my life. But knowing that you reached somebody and helped them feel something in their soul that then helped them feel and translate some part of something that they were working through, because she was going through some very difficult things. That is life-changing and I mean, that's just reality. The power of theater is that it can touch your life, and the art can translate itself in the most interesting ways into even your day-to-day life. It can help you handle your next day's stress or problems. The memories of it can help you get through the most complicated of issues. And it's a gift. Theater's a gift.
I was lucky enough to be in a production of Othello the day my mother died, and at a time where everything was crazy. It was so nice for 2 hours to just click everything off, to be around like 12 of my closest friends, and for a little while I knew where to stand, what to say, what direction to look while I was saying things. And it really was the luckiest thing that could have possibly happened at a time in your life that's rough. And that's exactly it. It's the power of theater. It's that whole, like, I'm okay for this little bit. I'm okay until I get stabbed in the second act. But until I get stabbed in the second act, I'm fine.
Oh, I know what character you were playing.
Rodrigo.
I mean, theater, it touches so many people in so many different ways. And I think we probably all have some story of a character or a role we've played or something we've done on set, on stage, behind the scenes, the people we've worked with. It's changed us. And the people that we work with, we develop bonds with. And so even after you get done with the show, you stay in touch with people for years afterwards. I mean, I've got friends I haven't seen in 25 years, but I was on a play with them 27 years ago. We still talk every week on social media. And if we saw each other tomorrow, it'd be like we hadn't even missed a beat. It's that creating of familiar inside, the theater community, but it also conveys across the stage and the audience receives that. So
Yeah, I can relate as well. It was like when I was in high school and fell into theater, that time performing would always just pass because I wasn't there anymore. That
Right.
it was like you were saying, JJ is like, I don't have to worry about what to say. I As a socially awkward person, that was great. It's like, oh, I know how
Mhm.
to respond.
Yeah.
And just
Theater
getting
gives
lost in that
a lot of
role.
divergence.
hmm Um, yeah, and we do make some serious connections within the theater community, like you said, because you're, in some cases, literally bleeding and sweating and living with.
Oh yeah, totally understand that one.
hmm
I noticed that
Then you cut
before.
my finger
You
off.
okay?
Oh yeah, this is 5 years old now. I cut off the tip of my finger making a set.
Ooh,
Oh,
And the
you're supposed to
battle
pour
wound.
yourself into the show, but not to that extent.
Well, when you work 16-hour days and you're like, dude, it's 5 o'clock and I need some food, but I'm going to cut this last thing. And for whatever reason, you blank and go, oh, I'm supposed to be using the miter saw, but instead you go to the table saw to cut the 4-inch piece of 1x.
Mm,
Yeah, bad mistake sometimes. 26 years, I had never made a mistake that egregious, but I did.
so
You
wow.
you were
really,
overdue. That's what we're saying.
yeah, oh, I was overdue. Yeah, definitely. That's not to say I never bled on set before, but never to that extent.
Oh, wow. So
I think we've all left pieces of ourselves in theaters.
Yeah,
Some literally.
Some literally.
Literally.
or unfortunately, depending on who you ask. But
yes. And what you were saying before, and Mara, and we were talking about this, about how to change up theater and the ways people are modifying theater, because, we've seen everything from people doing Shakespeare to, putting it in modern day people have played with Shakespeare enough that it's shocking. Like, wait, you're setting it in Elizabethan England? What? You're doing it in the time frame? What?
wait, you're having
You can
men?
do that?
Wait, you're having men play women on stage in Tennessee?
Right.
Mm.
Oh, sorry.
Uh,
I
You
can't go
know,
now. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that.
But we've got drunk Shakespeare happening. We've got immersive theater, which scares the hell out of some people. Um, dragging people onto the stage. Um, there are a lot of things that are being done, kind of to try to gin up more interest. Hey, come watch our show. It's not just a standard play. We're gonna like grab someone in the audience, or we're
Yeah,
giving out free booze.
my
Um,
parents decided to do it first back in the 70s when they started sending performers down the aisle naked and grabbing people to take up on stage to dance with them. Um,
mhm.
it was
Yeah.
experimental theater, and now it's like become its own type of theater.
Right. So and I'll start with you this time, JJ. How do you feel about people mixing and with the medium and doing things like that?
I well, the big answer is go for it. If you can connect with people and bring people in, my opinion is worth a hill of beans. So whatever it takes to get people in the audience. And sometimes that stuff's really fun. I've done a choose your own adventure, like mystery plays and stuff, and and that sometimes that stuff is absolutely a blast. Um, when it comes down to it, I still think the best way to draw people in is to give them an experience they're not going to forget, and if that for someone is getting pulled up on stage and being told to clap while the band plays, I'm not here to yuck their yum. Have a grand old time. I would prefer myself to sit in the theater and cry or laugh or whatever it takes, personally, but have your fun.
All right. How about you, Matt?
I'm of the same mindset. I can see where some people may not be too keen on getting pulled up on stage, but I think as an actor, you should be able to read the room and kind of go, okay, that's not someone that wants to be on stage. But I think to do something different and to be more experimental with what we're doing, aside from getting butts and seats and to help bring the wonder back into plays, I think I'm all for it. If it can be something that's done safely, obviously, then please, let's do things like take people from the audience, or do things like Drunk Shakespeare. Anything to bring, like I said, to bring that magic, that awe into more people's lives. I'm good with.
I mean,
How about?
kind of
Go ahead.
two minds on this. I mean, you've got the front of house, and on that side, yeah, okay, it's great because the actors are kind of getting more feedback from the audience. Audience participation drives actors. You get higher caliber acting out of the actors in theory, and the audience gets entertained by watching someone either do astronomically well or floundering around on stage and they get a good laugh or something along those lines. That said, back of house, I panic.
Error.
I don't want them picking up the $500 prop that's going to take, insane amounts of time to fix once they do whatever they're supposed to do with it. Like, the ridiculously expensive crystal vase that they're supposed to pick up and do this. And what if they shatter it? Those things make me nervous in ways I can't begin to describe. Like there's an anxiety that just chokes you up about that kind of theater at that point. But if, from back of house perspective and a purely cost driven metric, it's still pretty cool to watch everybody get to enjoy these things. I mean, mystery dinner theater is kind of a cool, fun thing. I have made many props for mystery dinner theaters because inevitably they're intended to break. So, you make them at a price point where you're pretty sure that if they break, no one's going to cry too hard. But they're very interactive. They draw people in, they get you excited, they get you involved. And 9 times out of 10, you never have the same experience, even if you come back 2 nights in a row, because it changes. That keeps butts in seats. So improv. I mean,
what was that show that ran in LA for so long? Was it Tony and Tina's Wedding?
Tony and Tina's Wedding,
ran forever because people could go see it over and over and over.
Yeah, like in Atlanta, you've got Dad's Garage that does.
Oh, I love Dad's.
They also do Dungeons and Dragons improvise.
The first show of the season last night with Mark Meir.
Yeah, and they're doing one at Nerdy Gras this coming Saturday at 2:30. In fact, shameless plug, people can actually get 2 seats at the table with Mark Meir for improv in the raffle. So, like, if you want to experience these things and you don't think you can do it, there are conventions that are doing it and giving people the experience of being in a theater without going to a theater because they're doing it at a con. But it kind of gets you to wet your whistle into these more experimental kind of improv, interactive, submersive theater experiences. And I think it's really cool from that perspective. Again, from a props and expense, the liability insurance on those theaters scares me. But that's a story. I'm sure Chris can understand that.
I was going to say, let's go to you now, Chris. What's your thoughts on the matter?
I love interactive theater. I think it is one of the best ways to get people involved, because sometimes when you're in the audience and you look around you, you see people on their phones or dozing off or with their eyes glazed over. And interactive theater is a way of keeping people on their toes. The audience doesn't know what's coming next. They don't know what to expect. So they're on alert and they're actually engaged and actually paying attention. And if they get to participate, then it's a massive hit of adrenaline for most people when they get pulled out of their seats and they get involved in the production. And then you've got somebody who wants to come back again. Then you've got someone who wants to experience that over and over, and they bring more people with them. So I think that interactive theater has a great value in theater overall. And it's not interactive in the same way, but one of the best experiences I've ever had from an audience perspective was Sleep No More.
Where's Kevin when you need him?
Go on. You're given a mask so that you don't affect the performers. Your facial expressions can affect the performers. You're in what looks like a modern commedia mask that's all white with this massive snout. And you're kicked off. You're brought upstairs in an elevator and they stop at random floors. They make a point of separating you from your party and they kick you out of the elevator and they keep going. Mm-hmm. And you have to, Matthew Looney style, find your own way through this 5-story maze of different scenes. And it's Rebecca and Macbeth being told in various rooms all throughout this warehouse made to look, vintage. And it really is, you can go back to that every single night. You can go back 300 times and you'll have 300 different experiences. Mm-hmm. And it's just a really fascinating new take on theater, and that kind of thing. Sorry.
Oh no, yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean,
theater should and needs to evolve.
Yes.
There should always be new stuff to draw people in, and if theater has always adapted, going all the way back to the Greeks, bringing in new ideas, bringing in new concepts, bringing in music, shall we say? But yeah, so anything, I'm looking forward to theaters that start bring in your smartphone.
That's
someone's
happened.
doing something.
That's happened. There was a run of a show at the Public a few years before the pandemic called Publicity. Mm-hmm. It was a 3-week run that starred Daniel Radcliffe, and they encouraged people to bring their cell phones and interact with the performers via cell phone during the performance.
The production I mentioned earlier of I believe it was Macbeth, they had to do during the during
6 times.
I know. Well, I'm not in a theater. I can whistle too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mara. Is that Macbeth? We're not supposed to mention Macbeth.
We're supposed to call it the Scottish laptop.
But they did. I believe it was that production where, if you wanted to, you could opt in to text messages because they were having while they were performing during the pandemic, and you were watching in front of your screen, and they'd cut to like live actors. It was mainly a filmed performance, but the live actors would cut in and have little bits as well. But then you could also get text messages for scenes that were cut or that would be happening in somewhere else. And so you would have, that 2-screen experience while you were watching in your own house.
Yeah. And that's actually one of the wonderful things I thought that came out of like digital theater and digital plays and stuff like that, is that interactive element and stuff like that people can participate in. And some of my earliest memories are of children's theater and being pulled up on the stage, and I remember what a huge impact that had on me as a child and got me to where I am today. And so interactive elements can really play a big role in getting people started as well. And that's the thing, because sitting down and watching, I'm going to say Hamlet. Hamlet isn't for everybody. Isn't quite the same as watching, say, a drunk Shakespeare version of Hamlet. It's a way to get new and fresh blood interested in those experiences. So maybe later on, maybe they're interested in more of the serious theater. So that's why I'm all about interactive theater. I think it's a way to get people involved, get people interested.
Yeah, actually, just remind me of experimental that was up. I want to say it was at Tech, but it might have been at Hollins. It's been about 15 years now. No, maybe it hasn't been quite 15 years. Basically, it was a combination of The Taming of the Shrew and The Tempest.
Oh.
And they did it. And this was, I think I had an iPhone 7, if that dates it a little bit better. But when you went in to the show, they gave you this text number to text as everything was going on and you were getting texts from people that were backstage that were supplemental lines going in between. It was almost like Rocky Horror, where you've got the call outs, but you were getting them on text.
That's
Wow.
cool.
Like, it was just a whole nother aspect to it. It was cool.
Well,
That is.
and that's just it. Like, there's so many ways to get the audience involved, and it's not new. I think it's just more widely publicized now, interactive theater.
And there are also, and I know we're probably about to wrap up, but there are also different ways to be interactive as well. Like I performed The Tempest on a boat once.
Yeah.
Or
I'm on a boat.
yeah, or I think it was about 10 years ago when Shakespeare in the Park did Hair. And
Yeah.
so you got to see Hair in Central Park, which was amazing. And
Yeah,
that's where it
yeah.
should be.
With full public nudity.
Yeah.
New York.
Wow.
New York nudity is kind of required.
And so, but those are also things that are just sort of, make something a little bit more of an event, because, you won't forget the time you saw The Tempest and it was, rocking with the waves.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Mhm.
Even though the play takes place on an island and not a boat, but whatever.
Don't bring details into this.
There's water.
But yes, unfortunately, we are kind of running up on time here. We didn't touch. Once again, we had a bunch of questions and we got through about half of them. So we will have to revisit this topic. I do want to thank everyone for coming. I didn't get to mention the Danny Boyle Frankenstein. That's one of my favorite theatrical experiences.
Yes.
for the
Yeah,
actors.
definitely.
That's
So
yeah.
we'll put a pin in that for next time. Until then, starting with you, Mara, if people are interested in finding out anything you're up to, what you're doing, what's the best way to be located on the socials or anything, or should people leave you the heck alone?
Well, that's one of the wonderful things about being back of house. I'm like the person nobody really knows there, but I'm also kind of well known for not being there. Does that make sense? One of my friends was like, "Are you going to wear stage blacks?" I was like, "No, I'm just going to wear my black jacket with my hood. They get too bad. They won't see me."
There you go.
I mean, you can find me online. My Facebook is technically personal. I do have a public profile. I don't use it very often. You can friend request either one. I'll Facebook stalk you, decide whether or not I think you might be safe around my kids. If I think you are, then you'll get added. If I don't, you won't. But on that, you can find me every year at Dragon Con on the costuming track and the fantasy literature track. I moderate and do a lot of panels. I'm also an attending professional there. If you really want to find me and tell me you hated everything I said today, you can do that next weekend at Nerdy Gras. I will be there all weekend with Prop House 42, which is my production company. We're running videography and doing the photo shoots and a bunch of cosplay stuff. And you can also find me at various international costuming events throughout the land over the next year as a judge or a contest runner, including the Page to Stage of Dragon Con, the Friday Night Costuming Contest at Dragon Con, and the Cults of Con costume at Dragon Con. There you go.
All right. And JJ.
You can find me pretty much anywhere under my name, JJ Hawkins, with the exception of, I think, Instagram, which I had to get Mars Needs, which Mars Needs is also the name of my podcast, Mars Needs Podcasts. It's defunct at the moment, but there is life being sparked back into it very soon.
Cool. Matt.
On the socials, if you're looking for a whole lot of nothing and then a lot of content popping up really quickly, feel free to follow me. It's way too many voices, the number 2, many voices. I'm sorry, 2 as in TOO, not the number 2, but it's the number 2 when you write it out. Yeah, it's the number 2, many voices. And that's where that's where you can find me.
All right. And Chris.
Because I'm mostly an admin person, I'm not very public typically, but my Facebook is Chris Fiore, my name. I'm on Instagram as Chris Fiore 52. And I'm always open to meeting new people, talking about theater and interacting about theater all the time.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm not being savaged. by the boy.
The boy.
I kid you not, he's a biter. I have actual scars.
I totally feel you. I could show you my arms from the little one. They're fishes. Like, they're adorable, but they're like, seriously.
He's literally
look at what they do.
He is literally scratching me because I won't let him on the computer.
Oh. He's
And
like,
mine
"Mom,
was just happy to be
Sandy."
giving cuddles.
Nope.
I must tell the interwebs about the lack of food I'm getting.
I fed him before this. I was on point.
It doesn't matter. They never believe they've been fed.
Exactly.
No. You're actively eating right now. You've never fed me ever. You have food in your mouth. No, I don't. Cats.
Cats and theater go together hand in hand, and not just because of a musical.
That's right.
I mean, come on, Hemingway had cats.
Theater, cats, and the internet. We've got the trifecta.
Exactly.
There we go. So if you're watching us on the Facebook, please join our Facebook group. If you're watching us on the YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell for notifications. Please feed the algorithm. Although I should probably reverse that, because if you're watching us on YouTube, go to the Facebook. If you're on the Facebook, go to the YouTube, etc. Yes. The almighty algorithm. Yes. Egon said that was bad, but then we did it anyway. So Sarah, what do we have up for next?
Next thing we have coming up is the Halfway to Con online meetup, March 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. Basically, Gary and myself are going to be on talking about what we have coming up, the state of our activities at Dragon Con, etc. The next panel we have is the first in a series, which is Theater is Not Just Musicals. This one's going to be featuring dance, magic, and improv. We're going to be having Dragon Con guest John Armstrong on there. We're going to be having dancer and performer Sorsha Masters and Atlanta-based improv actor Tim Millard. I clarified how to say his last name, who is performs regularly at things like Sketchworks, Comedy, and Dad's Garage in Atlanta. And that's going to be a real fun time. They're going to be talking about what they do and why it's all theater.
Yes, and since we've mentioned them a few times, I will say as well, Dad's Garage, find them on YouTube. They did live performances and things through the pandemic, which helped keep me sane. And this ties into our previous panel, support your local theater. Dad's Garage being a local theater, give them a look, especially if you're in the ATL.
Come out and Nerdy Gras next weekend.
That's right. See him in Nerdy Gras. And what's going on again next weekend, Mara? Is Nerdy Gras?
Nerdy Gras, nerdygras.org. I think there's only a few patches left. Go buy them before they're gone.
So, Chris, Mara, JJ, Matt, thank you so much for coming. I am truly grateful. We will definitely have to talk more because, like I said, we only got through about half our talking points. But until next time, we're going to have to bring the curtain down, and I hope everyone has a lovely rest of your Saturday.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Everybody say Macbeth.
Macbeth.
Macbeth.